Okay, so it's question and answer time for the evening, and who has a question? Yeah?
What do you think about other stand-up comedy teachers?
Wow, boy, what do I think of other stand-up comedy teachers? Man, this is kind of where, wow, now you're putting me on a bit of a spot here, I gotta say, because I've got some very specific opinions, and so let me approach this. Other stand-up comedy teachers. So here's the distinction that I make for stand-up comedy teachers. I've got several, but the first one is the difference between an opinion-oriented teacher, okay, and what I call technique-oriented teachers. Does that make sense? It's opinion-oriented teachers are these stand-up comedy teachers who really don't know or haven't spent the time to really understand and look at what are the fundamental techniques needed to do stand-up comedy. They just put up a plaque, and when I'm teaching stand-up comedy, and a lot of times they're former club managers or comedians who couldn't make it, or club owners who needed some extra money, or somebody who's running an open mic and can get other people to pay them a little money, etc. at the open mic and say, I'm going to teach you stand-up comedy. And the problem with it is opinion-oriented. In other words, the teacher is, this teacher is saying to the students, basically something like, put up a show. And people will say, well, I don't know how to write a show, and nobody's ever taught me anything about what a joke is or how to write a show, and the teacher says, put up something anyway. So they go home and write the best that they can, and the teacher says, yeah, put that up, and then this teacher sits around and says, I'll tell you what's funny and what's not funny. That's what I mean by opinion. Okay? They're going to decide what's funny and what's not funny. And that right there is what gives stand-up comedy classes a bad name, because any comedian worth their salt doesn't need to be told what's funny, because they know what they think is funny. And that's what gives stand-up comedy classes a bad name. These teachers are going, I'll tell the students what's funny. Now, there are some students who want to be told that because they don't really want to do the work behind doing stand-up comedy and learning all the things that are important to it. Now, the other problem with these other teachers is with the opinion, they'd also do censorship like, I'm offended by that joke. You can't do that joke because I'm offended. What? What? Who cares if the teacher's offended? Oh, or the teacher goes, I don't find it funny. So what? That's your opinion if you don't think it's funny. Other things that'll go like, I've heard things like, you have to get rid of your dialect before you can do stand-up, and you've got to talk slower to do stand-up. I mean, really, this person really should have, been coaching Robin Williams, don't you think? Talk a little slower. It's that kind of stupid stuff that makes people wary of stand-up comedy teachers, is because they're not teaching. Now, some of them have a couple of techniques. They'll say things like, do K words because they're funnier, or what they call the rule of three jokes, or a few little, what I call basic techniques that any comedian knows. They'll share those, or they'll help people with microphone technique and a few things like that. And that's useful, okay? But that's not what I consider being a technique-based teacher. That's more assistance and opinions about the person's art. And the problem with this is one, these teachers, I think the crime is really they're passing on their own sense of humor, cloning their own sense of humor in other people. And I think even worse is they're passing on their own limitations. In other words, the limitations this person has for doing comedy is the only thing that they know is what they know, and everybody, basically what they're saying to everybody, this is the way I do comedy, therefore you have to do comedy that way as well. because that's all I know and I can't understand anything beyond that. So I'm going to make everybody fit into my little, little box of knowledge that I have, which usually isn't very expansive in my opinion.